So bear with me. It's a really smart idea, too, to give a talk on breakups, like right after you get dumped, right? It's like I'm in the zone right now. So I'm just trying to pull up some stuff on my phone here to share, to use. Okay. The real reason I'm bummed that I don't have my presentation is that I was going to dedicate, and I am dedicating this talk tonight, to a woman named Bubba, who I've actually never met. So I'll start with this. I have a movie. Maybe we can just share it with folks via email, because we made it as a little iMovie. It's like been my project all week, says iMovie. My best friend in the whole world, Danny, his grandmother's name was Bubba, and I've heard the story so many times. I had Danny make a movie of it, and I kind of recreated it myself, dressed up as Bubba. Bubba and her husband were married for, I think, 35 years in Indiana, Catholics, kind of pillars of the community. I'm trying to tell it like Danny, I can't. And at some point, she's probably right around my age right now, I'm 43. She learns that her husband's been having an affair with his secretary. I think I'm getting this right. They're members of the Catholic Church. The church won't give them, he wants a divorce, that's right. He's gonna leave her, his wife, 3 children, get a divorce. The church won't give him a divorce. So he's going to get the marriage annulled. Can you imagine this? He's going to erase her from his life, erase the children, annulling their past together, right? So she goes to the church. In my mind, she's going to see the Pope, but I don't, because I'm not Catholic, but the way Danny tells it, by this point, I've heard it so many times, but she went straight to the top. And proceeds to tell, I don't know, who would she see, a diocese? I'm not sure. Exactly what her husband's been doing, blah, 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 nailing the secretary. So the church denies him the divorce. Before he comes home, though, she's gone home and cut the left sleeve off every one of his designer suits and hung them back up perfectly in the closet. It's such a perfect thing to do because they're all there, perfection, but not there, right? She took his car and put it underneath the garage door. This is before the days of electric, right? She manually, with her little body, went down and down. She smashed the car to smithereens with the door. And then, I can't remember what she put in his boat, because he had a boat. Put everything in it, set it out in the lake, set it on fire. That's all in one afternoon. And then my favorite part of the story is when his mom, she comes downstairs, and Bubba's sitting at the table smoking a cigarette. She goes, "You see what I did to your dad's car?" So this talk is for Bubba, even though I've never met her. We'll send you guys the movie of the recreation later. So thank you guys for coming out tonight. So I know why I'm here. Why are you guys here? I really do like to start all of my Olios with a little discussion. Usually discussions at the end. I like it at the beginning. Anyone going to be brave, not brave? Maybe it doesn't take bravery to. Why are you interested in this talk? I would die for you. Who signs up for that? Anybody? Is this too hard of a? Some folks are here because they're my friends, and you're here to support me. But yeah.
Comes one of your previous Olios on the creepers, freaks, and.
Oh, the perverts talk. Yeah. Oh, awesome! Thank you. That's nice to hear. Thank you. Anyone here because they were have a broken heart? Anyone currently have a broken heart right now? Walking around, open wounded, sorrow-filled person. I'm so sorry for your pain. Anyone else ever had a broken heart? Okay. Raise your hand, and don't feel weird, but raise your hand if you've never had your heart broken.
Can we turn around and look?
No one. So nobody's. Yeah. Nobody's raising their hand. Which is great. I was going to, because I had the line prepared, for anyone who's not yet had their heart broken, I would say, I'm sorry, better luck next time, right? Because if you're walking around saying that you're fine, then you might need to go to the doctor. It's what I tell my students when my students say they find history boring. I'm a history professor. And I say, oh my God, you should probably see a psychologist. That means you find humanity uninteresting. There's might be something wrong with you. So if you don't feel sorrow in your life at the end of love, go to the doctor. Okay, but we all do, so we're all on the same page. So, like I said, somebody broke up with me. I hate the word break up. It's so weird. right? Dumped, breaked up, whatever. A relationship ended, and it's really kind of, struggling with that, but also struggling with the way people around me and the way like our culture in general has responded to me. Not as if I don't walk around thinking culture's about me, but like I can't find a place to sort of put this experience in a place that feels comfortable to me. And all the advice that's out there, I hate it. I fucking hate it. It fills me with rage. Somebody's had to have gotten some really annoying advice at some point in a heartbreak. Anyone want to share one? How many? It will get better, right? It's like, yeah, I know. Like, I'll also die someday. That's not that comforting, right? What else? Focus on yourself. Anyone hear this one? Take self-care. I'm like, I don't need yoga right now. I don't need to breathe. Like, I am at the brink of like self-dissolution. Like, I am melting into nothingness. I'm not gonna miss this by going to a yoga class. Are you kidding me? That's insane. So I started thinking about, what I tend to do in periods of loss, or is turn to my one friend that's never lets me down, always is there for me. Who is it? Foucault. I tend to read Foucault in times of darkness. And then I also turn to Freddie Mercury, but it's too soon. I can't watch Freddie Mercury yet, it's too soon. I try to intellectualize, I try to take my experience and put it outside of myself, right? And see, I'm a historian, so everything happens in a context. Even my inner emotional life is somehow produced by the world around me. This must be historically produced too. I am experiencing this heartache as a woman and as a white person of a certain class background, right, who's watched certain movies, right? I've grown up with a value system. I didn't invent this, yet it is mine, and nobody gets to take it from me and tell me to practice self-care. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to deny the moment by pretending that I'm over it, right? That's violence to myself. I will not do that. Okay, so if I have my PowerPoint, I go, and I would show you guys some funny images right now. And what they would be is, and correct me if I'm wrong, or if I'm missing something, but to my mind, in our culture, when we think of, I forgot to mention this talk is written as if everyone in the room were a woman. And men, if you are not used to using the other gender's experience to understand your own, just ask a woman afterwards, because we have to do it every single day. Every time we go to a movie, we have to pretend like that's our experience. So you guys can do it too. So I'm assuming everyone in the room is a general subject category woman, and guys, you'll figure it out. Okay. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but like when the heartbroken person, aka the woman, shows up in our culture, there's three versions of her. Crazy, thinking Glenn Close, what is it? Fatal Attraction. Incredibly like superhero strength strong. Beyonce, Lemonade, right? The water. And then also, if she's sad at all, she's kind of stupid. And I was thinking Sliding Doors, Gwyneth Paltrow, right? Like, am I missing anything? You either have to be super strong, you're nuts, or you're still grieving the guy because you're an idiot, right? Am I missing? And I apologize too. This is a pretty heterosexual kind of talk. I should put at the end of every Olio description, she's straight. Just know that. I hope this is useful to queer members of the audience, but I am speaking from the position of a heterosexual person. Okay, so am I missing any other images of the heartbroken person, the heartbroken woman? Crazy, stupid, strong. That's about it, right? Can you think of anyone who's just sad and not stupid? Usually they're sad because they haven't figured out yet that the guy's an asshole, right? And it assumes that there's always a winner and a loser and a good guy and a bad guy, right? When sometimes relationships come to an end and there's no one to be angry at. What do you do with that grief, right? And I see this as part of a broader culture in which my dissertation's on the history of death, and my friend Sheldon's here. Hi, Sheldon. We as a culture, my friends who told me like, go to yoga, drink water or whatever. I'm not angry at that. I don't drink water. I'm not angry at them because we live in a culture that does not have any language for talking about grief and loss. right? So my dissertation on death, I learned and I talked about how people used to know exactly what to say to someone who lost their third cousin. Like, there was a very strong social prescription for dealing with grief. Like, people wore a certain kind of clothing, so you would know they're at this stage of grief, and you knew this is how you should act with them if you saw them at the grocery store, even though there weren't grocery stores back then, but, right? We don't have any way of talking about death, let alone something like breakups, other than, come on, you're gonna be fine, get over it, you don't need him. The amount of times I heard, you don't need a man, I'm like, yeah, I know I didn't lose man, I lost a person who has a name. It's a very specific thing. Can you imagine, like, if someone died and like, oh yeah, but you know other people, right? I know, but that one died, right? It's like, it's a very specific loss, right? So I'm hoping tonight we can think, and I feel, I'll give you my credentials on grief here in just a second, but I'm hoping maybe we can think a little bit about a feminist informed way to talk about this kind of loss in a way that's useful to to other people that are in it. Yeah, and so, yeah. And one more thing about the kind of the history of death and what it's taught me that I'm bringing to this discussion. I'm very interested, so I studied death on slave plantations. And I'm interested in the way death informed white masters' sense of themselves as masters, right? So there's something very upheaving about death, right? The emotional landscape is destroyed, and this is when you can see people talking, right? So the link between this and that talk, or that line of thinking, I'm interested in the way inner emotional life is created by social context, but also bolsters relationships of power, right? The way we talk about emotions keeps certain people in power and unchecked, and other people disempowered. Okay. Let's get sad. Yeah, thank you. Let's see, did I forget anything? Anyone in the room sad? No? Okay. Always sad. In my PowerPoint slide 2, I was like, I found the universal sound of sadness. It's from a pop song. Let me see if anyone can guess. It's not a word, but it is a vocal utterance. It is the sound of mourning, of heartbreak.
Taylor Swift.
The end of Purple Rain. We should all sing it, like the hoo hoo, right? Like that. That's heartache, isn't it? When Prince, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's like the Christian, dun, 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 right? Oh, that's what I was going to use to get us sad. Instead, I will use Sylvia Plath. And I was wishing you guys were going to break into like singing that. Like, okay. So, anyone in the room a Plath fan? You guys? A lot of people I read her when I was like 16, right? Right? Read her now. I really recommend reading Sylvia Plath now. Read her when you're 16 too, but read her now. I'm going to read this poem in its entirety. It's called, and if you've ever hung out with me drunk, you've heard me recite it like 25 times. So this is called Elm, and she's, you can. This is, obviously before she died, and you can see. That's a real, I was saying, yeah. But you can see her, she's kind of, if you haven't read this collection of poetry, a lot of it's she's talking to the moon, and in this case she's talking a tree. A tree is actually talking to her about the moon, right? Because she had a lot of insomnia. Okay. I know the bottom, she says. I know it with my great tap root. It is what you fear. I do not fear it. I have been there. Is it the sea you hear in me? Its dissatisfactions? Or was it the voice of nothing that was your madness? Love is a shadow, how you lie and cry after it. Listen, those are its hooves. It has gone off like a horse. All night I shall gallop thus impetuously, till your head is a stone and your pillow a turf, echoing, echoing. Or shall I bring you the sound of poison? This is rain now, this hush. And this is the fruit of it, tin white arsenic. I have suffered the atrocity of sunsets. Scorched to the root, my red filaments burn and stand a hand of wires. Now I break up in pieces that fly about like clubs. A wind of such violence will tolerate no bystanding. I must shriek. The moon also is merciless. She would drag me cruelly, being barren. Her radiance scathes me. Or perhaps I've caught her. I let her go. I let her go. And you can hear Sylvia's now kind of entering. She's the one speaking. Diminished and flat as after radical surgery. How your bad dreams possess and endow me. I am inhabited by a cry. Nightly it flaps out looking with its hooks for something to love. I am terrified by this dark thing that sleeps in me. All day I feel its soft, feathery turnings, its malignity. Clouds pass and disperse. Are those the faces of love? Those pale irretrievables? Is it for such that I agitate my heart? I am incapable of more knowledge. What is this face, so murderous in its strangle of branches? Its snaky acid's kiss, it petrifies the will. These are the slow, isolate faults that kill. It's amazing, isn't it? Thoughts? Yeah, okay. Perfection, right? I love this poem so much. And I really brought you guys to silence with that one. It's a party poem. So the thing that strikes me so much about this and how I find it useful for where I am right now and how I'm using my scholarship and my background as a feminist historian to kind of get through this moment is this line, I am incapable of more knowledge. And in this line, I think it's the saddest line in the poem, right? The one about the horse too, right? Love is a shadow, you idiot. Like you only feel it, like it's always an illusion. It's gonna leave you. It is the thing that leaves. That's what, right? That's also sad. But this I am incapable of more knowledge really gets to me because this is her, I think, saying, I am done. I will not continue with my life. And I have, I know in the description for tonight I said, how do we reconcile this Plath with the one who in the same collection vows to rise from the ashes and eat men like air, right? We allow her her suicide. And it's a very difficult thing to say, and I'm being very cautious in what I say this, but she's saying right here, I choose not to live in the world with its values. I don't choose this world anymore. I'll come back to that in a minute, but it centers on this idea I'm incapable of more knowledge. So to think about heartbreak and a feminist sort of interpretation of heartache, I think I need to start by, I've already started, but I need to explain my idea of what love is. And don't worry, it's not going to be love is knowledge, I think. It's just a form of knowing. That's how I view love. So falling into love is coming to know something. You've remembered something, you realize something, right? And that's why I don't see it being possible to stop loving somebody. Because then you have to unknow what you know, right? Milan Kundera writes about this in his book of Laughter and Forgetting. He has this great character, Tamina, who she's trying to protect her love, her husband, by trying to protect her memories, right? And as her memories start to fade, her husband's dead, she tries to swim to this island where there's no time and all the children just remain children, right? Because she's like, if I can get there, then I won't ever forget, right? Forgetting is the absence of love. So knowledge and memory, that's love, right? So I see love as a way of knowing. And therefore, I think that there's something inherently useful and profound about the loss of love. Grief is love's mirror image, in my opinion. Again, this is a little bit spiritual, so I don't have any PhD around this thing, but I do think that grief is love. It's the same thing. It's the same experience. And in both moments, you get to know something new, right? That's why I don't want to bypass this moment and self-care, what have you. I want to learn. I want to know. Okay. Very briefly, I'd like to share with you, I'm not going to tell you, and then he said this, then he did this. I keep thinking of how funny it would have been tonight if I just came with a bunch of pictures of my ex and just cried, Like I was sort of tempted. No, but just so you know, like that I have, the credentials to be talking about history and feminist theory, PhD, blah, blah, blah. But I've got some pretty good breakup or sadness credentials too. So just briefly, first, I've had my heart broken 3 times. First time, 28. I met big love of my life when I was 20. We were married by 25. By 27, he had slept with like 15 other people. By 28, he had left me for a friend of mine. 29, he's getting married to her. All my friends are at the wedding. By 31, he's dead in a fire, right? So the same guy is like, how many times can I leave her, right? Betrayal, divorce, married my friend, died. And I'm fucking planning his funeral and introducing his second wife to his mother at his funeral. She and I are really close friends now, don't worry, like we're great. But so that was number 1. Number 2, divorce again. I think it's interesting. I met him right after Evan died. So I think grief kind of opened me up to love. I do think they're very similar experiences. We had a great relationship that did come to an end, but it was a very painful end. And I think at that point I was like, I'm bulletproof, man. Nothing can hurt me, right? And then I recently had another heartbreak that just ended. And it's interesting, you realize as you get older, like the losses just kind of sit on top of each other, don't they? That which doesn't kill you thing is bullshit. That which doesn't kill you leaves you with a limp, right? And then you're crawling on your hands and knees, and then you just lay face down. Okay. Those are my heartbreakers. I love, actually, if we could go around the room here, everyone's. I love talking about sadness, but we don't have time. Anyone want to share like one heartbreak? No? Okay. So how can we use feminism to help us through this? Ladies, I'm just kidding. I'm glad there are men here too. I really, really am. A couple of concepts here. If this are Gender Studies 101, I'm drawing from, let's see, maybe I should shorten this here. 3 kind of basic concepts within feminist theory. The first one is feminist epistemology, which is a feminist study of knowledge, right? How we come to know things. And the method it's a feminist sort of understanding of how do we measure what counts as knowledge, what counts as true or false, right? So it questions the questions that we ask and then the methodologies we have for proving something false or true. Patricia Hill Collins, if you want to do reading on this, I think is the best theorist out there. Her work, Black Feminist Thought. And so feminist epistemology is grounded in this idea that all knowledge comes from a certain standpoint. And they're drawing from Marx here, right? That all knowledge that's produced has a politics behind it that somehow reflects the position of the person producing the knowledge. You guys with me? There's no value-free knowledge, period. It doesn't mean that the knowledge that we have is all flawed or wrong, right? It just means we wouldn't know something at all unless somebody asked a question, right? And the question itself is predetermined by political interest, right? So the question of, is there something in the brain that makes somebody gay? Is it being gay biological, right? Feminist epistemology is very critical of these kinds of questions, not because the science could or could not come up with the truth, right? Maybe they will find a gay brain, maybe they won't, I don't know, right? But why are we asking the question? Because who gives a shit, right? Like, why? I mean, I'm not saying like we don't care about gay people, but why do gay people need to be explained? Like, who cares? Like, does that make sense, right? So it's questioning the question itself. And perhaps more for our thinking on this tonight, within particularly Patricia Hill Collins' work, she argues that the way knowledge functions in society right now, white male knowledge is considered rational and abstracted from the human experience. It's outside of context. And everything else that women, people of color experience is counted as experience, not knowledge. Does that make sense at all to anyone? Let me think if I can. Okay. When I teach this to my students, the example I usually use is if there's a problem in public housing complexes, for example, right? A traditional knowledge-based approach would be to have somebody with a degree go study the problem who doesn't live there, come up with some numbers, waste a bunch of city money, 10 years later, maybe come up with a solution to the problem, right? What could you do instead? Ask the people who live there. What do you need here, right? But their experience doesn't count because we almost think that their experience sullies their ability to know. And Patricia Hill Collins says, no, like, their experience is knowledge. It should be valued as such, right? And it needs to be brought into the institutions of higher learning. So I think that women's experience of heartache is a place of knowing something that, in a sense, men don't know about romantic relationships. And that experience, and again, I know I'm using women's experience here, but that's okay. I think women's experience of heartache is a missing piece of our conversation around the sufferings that we all go through with regard to the loss of love. And that brings me to the second point here that I want to draw from, and that's we hear this very often. Maybe not. I have this dream fantasy in which people are just walking around reading feminist theory. One of my friends, he's queer, and he's like, "Don't men?" What do you say? He's like, "Don't dudes read feminism?" Like he was like asking, like, "Doesn't the guy you're dating read feminism?" He's like, "He doesn't read feminism?" I was like, "No." He does not read feminism. It was like, what a dream world do you think? Like, he's also a gender studies professor, you know? And he was like, but how do they get to fuck you? Right? And it's like, I kind of think that he's absolutely, like, before you get to have sex with a woman, you should study feminist theory. Like, why should you have access to the female body if you're not interested in the woman's experience and the condition in which we, like, the lived world, right? Every date I go on from here to forth. Here's my reader that I've put together, right? Introduction. When you get to chapter 5, Mabel will kiss, right? So I assume everyone thinks about this concept all the time, but maybe you don't. The personal is the political. Raise your hand if you've at least heard this. Yeah? Anyone? I need somebody to jump in here for a second. I need to hear another voice. Someone define this for us, and not Melissa, because you're really good at defining it. I know. What does it mean to you guys when you guys hear that? The personal is the political. Oh, come on. Have you ever really tried? Yeah, please. Oh, Sheldon, hi. Yeah, Sheldon can say.
What you read, what you watch, what you advocate is political. Although it may seem deeply personal, it's something that is connected to who you are.
So you said what you read, what you watch, like do you mean like your choice, like your taste?
Could be, but it's all these different parts of your personal identity.
Yeah. The way you express your personal expression as a human being is politically informed,
Right.
all the time. Someone else, yeah.
So, like, let's say a woman's having problems with her husband not helping with cleaning the house. She's going to address it at first as it's personal. It's my personal problem that I'm having with this individual. Actually, it's a political problem because of the way the society is set up, and if you waste your time actually trying to fix the personal, you're not addressing the larger political problem that's going to solve it for her.
Exactly, and he doesn't experience, the point that's really important for us to keep in mind, thank you for that, he does not experience it as political. She does, therefore her anger seems out of proportion to the situation. Because she's not just mad at this one thing, she's angry at injustice in general. And so it's a broader story she's encountering, and he's like, for him, it's individual. And the point, there's one other hand. Does somebody else want to? Yeah. Yes, because it goes both ways, right? The way the body and the identity in which you live shapes the worldview that you have. I had a student when I was trying to teach this in class. One of my students, she summed it up. She had a very beautiful example. She's a black woman. She's married to a white man, and she said, when we're fighting, it doesn't matter what we're fighting about. For me, it becomes about race, because in that moment, I become a black woman. Like when there's conflict, my otherness is right there, right? And for him, he's like, no, but I just see you. And you can understand kind of the beauty, I guess, that he's trying to, like, there's a beauty in what he's saying, but there's also an erasure of the daily experience that she lives through, right? That she never gets to not be a black woman, right? Just because his love does not, not that you want to not be a black woman. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's always going to be a part of her awareness. And so the thing about the personal is the political, and how it shapes the way we talk about romance If you don't notice the politics of your romantic relationship, it means you're on the privileged side of it. It's the privileged who don't see the political. That's the value. If you think this is just about me and her, then you are the privileged one. And I really believe that we are at a point in time where a lot of men that I know, like millennials are better. I gotta say, like millennials are doing so much better. Like the dudes of that generation are like I'm definitely gonna start dating men in their 20s after this. Gen Xers, man, they got some work to do. Like, it's like feminism for them is just, will she get an abortion if I accidentally knock her up, and can she buy dinner? Yeah, I said that. I just said that. I do not see among my generation of men my age in general, while I see, and it's flawed and it's limited. And I'm thinking about, in particular, white men right now. I see some interest in checking their white privilege. Not enough, but I see some interest. The Me Too movement. I got a few awkward emails and texts from like people I dated a long time ago, like, did I hurt you? Like, I saw some wrestling with, am I a creep? Right? But I have not seen in any of my peers a recognition that their personal love relationships are deeply informed by inequality, and that they benefit from that in a way women do not. Women are set up to fail in so many ways in romantic relationships, and men are not. And men have not done that work. How am I doing for time here? Am I already out of time? I'm not, right? What's that? Oh my God, even without the presentation, I still have like an hour's worth of, okay, I gotta speed up. So what do I mean by this, that women are set up to fail? One of the pieces of advice, I accidentally stumbled upon this YouTube universe. Because sometimes, like, you know, I like to talk to Google like it's my friend. Like Google, do I seem different than when I was 40? Like, I'll just put in the weirdest questions. And so I did recently put in, do you think my ex-boyfriend still loves me? And I discovered this world of how to get your ex back. Do you guys know about this? Oh my God. It's this horrifying landscape of misogyny, of like, it's called don't contact. Like you're not allowed to contact a person. So you can be like in an interconnected relationship with somebody for years where you literally have a daily, maybe you still have like, you live to, whatever, and they can utter a sentence, I am breaking up with you. And you are now pathological if you contact them. But you pay money for these coaches who teach you to not contact, and then the guy will eventually want you, but never give up, but it's always your fault. It's so insidious and fucked up. Like I have their numbers. I was gonna be like, so everyone contact them every single day for the next month. All of us need to be calling these guys and asking them to stop taking brokenhearted women's money. It just makes me so angry. I'm a little off track here, but isn't that just enraging? Did you guys already know about this? Holy shit. Okay. So when I say how have they not done the work, I'm thinking in particular, and I promise I'm not thinking about one man in particular, I am thinking in general about the landscape, right? If my ex watches this later, I'm really not just talking about you, okay? But shorthand for it is the Bernie bro. Can't believe I just said that. Men who see themselves as politically progressive, maybe even call themselves socialists, and still think that individual choice and freedom are the absolute penultimate gods of romantic relationships, and do not value obligation to others, right? If you believe in this, in challenging like capitalism, for example, capitalism is why we are here. Capitalism is why I'm so sad. That's what caused my heartbreak on some level. And I will get that, I'll finish that in 10 minutes. I'm gonna explain all of this. If you believe that there should be a social safety net, that we should take care of others, right? Redistribute the wealth. You guys get what socialism is, right? But you don't think that on the interpersonal level, we owe each other anything beyond, yeah, but I told her it was over. There's something wrong with that, I think. We have arrived at a place where it's like it's a neoliberalist, like in terms of romance, we're in a neoliberalist like masturbate-a-thon, right? Like we are just like, it's pure choice with no social obligation to others that are in need and that are weak. Because the one who gets dumped is the weaker one, yes? And I say this very cautiously, women are the weaker gender. And I don't mean, we're physically weaker in general. We have less access to resources in general. We are socially conditioned to question ourselves. Like there's so many ways women arrive at a heterosexual relationship, not on equal grounds with men. And if men don't recognize that in their relationships to women, they are not socialists. I mean, so the early Marxist and socialist feminists of the late 19th century and early 20th century were very clear on this. Marx was very clear on this. Have you guys read Origins of the Family? He writes, like, the beginning of class opposition begins with man's dominance of woman. That's where it is. He's like the singular, if you want to understand class opposition, you want to understand labor relationships, look at what men have done to women in marriage. That's where it is. Right? I had the big quote, but it's not. Okay, so the history of this then, and I'll try to do this. Okay, how did we get here? Well, how did we get in a society where, again, I know that there's exceptions to the rule, but in general, don't we think of women as suffering more from heartbreak than men? Like men tend to be, the theory, like the idea is like, men are fine afterwards and women are really destroyed. And we're supposed to be comforted by this idea, like, but they get sad later. No, they don't. They're fine. They really are fine. Like they might get like a little sad, but men seem to do better after breakups. I ran into a friend the other day and he said, because we don't have to try, we can just upgrade. We don't have to commit to anyone and try to change with them over time because women are so available to us, we can just upgrade. He's right. They can just date someone else. I mean, like right now, there are 8 single women for every single man in New York City? Is that true? Last time I checked. Okay, so how do we end up here historically? Why do I think that we need to challenge, I'm not saying we need to teach women to become more independent and less sad. Feminism has, if it's taught us anything, it's stop valuing masculine ideals and start teaching men to be more like women, right? I don't want to live in a world that's guided by masculine principles. Violence, I'm not saying but patriarchy sucks. I value feminist theory and feminist worldviews. So I want men to be more like me in terms of romantic love. I don't want to get strong, become independent, be self-possessed. I want to recognize our interdependent relationships with each other, that we all need each other. It doesn't mean you have to stay in a relationship past the point of happiness, but it does mean people are not disposable, right? So how did we get here? Here's 200 years in 2 minutes. Historians call this the feminization of love. Previous to modern capitalism, if romantic love was expressed, it's a sort of a desire thing, it was men that wanted love. Men desired love, and they were they were like the gender of love. Women put off marriage as long as they could, because they knew when they get married, they're going to get pregnant. They have a 1 in 4 chance of dying every time. Marriage was kind of a bummer for women, so they put it off as long as they could. Average age of marriage in the 19th century actually was closer to 25. It goes down in the 20th century. It has its dip in the 1950s. It's like 18, which is insane. Like the average age was 18 or 19 years old. Average. Okay, that just drives me nuts. Okay, so how did capitalism then change this? Pre-capitalist society, men and women both need each other equally in terms of economic relationships. Why? Nobody can run a farm by themselves. Most people are living outside of urban centers. Everything that you need is produced at home, more or less. You need ink, grind the coal. You need sausage, take the intestines out, everything, even clothing, right? Side note, whenever I hear a man telling me that he values independence and his individuality, I want to pick him up with a helicopter, take him out to the forest and drop him naked and say, okay, start weaving, just plant some cotton bolls, turn that into thread, weave it, make cloth, right? All the while that you're doing that independently alone, you self-sovereign person, raise cows, chickens, plant some vegetables, right? Teach yourself culture, right? Invent religion, raise your children, like, you know what I mean? Like, we need each other. And right now, all of us are wearing clothing that was produced by women, most likely, because 80-90% of all sweatshop labor that's producing textiles is done by women. So men need women. They just pretend that they don't, right? Okay, so men and women need each other equally in a pre-capitalist society. Does that make sense? Everything's made at home. You must get married to have 10 kids to become your labor force. Nobody's going to inherit dad's farm when they're not married. And there's also a place for those who do not get married. If you're, Sister Sally or whatever, and you're the spinster, that's fine. You might be kind of a bummer, but there's always going to be a place for you because she's another person that can milk the cows. There's no homelessness. I know I'm painting like a rosy picture of the past. Like, they also didn't have dentists. Just keep that in mind, that part aside. But there was an economic necessity on both sides, and therefore marriage and romantic partnering. I'm not saying men and women were social equals, but the way they entered that relationship, it was an understood mutual dependence, right? Fast forward to market capitalism, fast forward to industrial capitalism, where we are today with corporate capitalism. Everything that you need, you can purchase on the marketplace, right? None of us make anything, except for those who actually do make our things, the invisibles, right? Access to the marketplace is given to men first. So in the 19th century, you start to see a shift in romantic love. It's called the woman question. It's a horrifying question. I think I gave it Olio on it. The question literally was, what are women good for? Because they don't produce anything for the marketplace. They don't have access to the wage. All they do is eat your food and spend half your paycheck or even more. And then they have all these kids that now we have to pay for them too. And the kids are not going to work on the farm anymore. They're all just dependents, right? You can literally buy sex in the cities, because now there's a huge rise in homelessness because of the transformations of capitalism, produces the greatest increase of homelessness was women and children. So now you have prostitution, so you can buy your sex, you can buy your clothing. By the 1950s, you don't even have to iron your clothing. You can buy shirts that are pre-ironed, like Playboy is like for The Bachelor. Don't get married, you can just buy everything, right? And now, so the question is like, well, what are women good for? What are they good for? Love. Women love. This is the feminization of love. And all these novels start getting into popular culture starts producing this idea that women will domesticate you and they'll teach you love. And women know now, again, I know that culture happens differently than this, and I'm speeding this up. Women are aware, like, they must get married to survive. You had to get a man to want you to survive, because the market, like the farm, the agrarian society is disappearing. You need access to the marketplace. You need access to a man because you need access to his money. That's why feminists in the 19th century called marriage legal prostitution, because they understood I'm trading sex for food through marriage. Capitalism produced this for the first time. Romantic love is now experienced on unequal terms. And that's, in historical perspective, 19th century is yesterday, you guys. That's not that long ago. We're still living in the cultural aftermath of that, right? In which women now they can't bring anything to the marriage negotiation except love and also beauty. You start to see like the ornamentation of the wife. Now we have the bride looks like a cake topper. My friend Karen Dunnick, I'm going to plug her book. As long as we both shall choose, she wrote a history of weddings, and she's just like, people never used to do these weird, elaborate weddings until marriage became unnecessary. Isn't that interesting? Like, marriage was kind of necessary for survival, cohabitation. People are just like, okay, we're married, bye. Got back in the garden. And now that we don't have to get married economically, we're like, marriage, right? It's a strange, okay, so I got to wrap this up here. Do you get my point? Women are not predetermined to be weak in love. It is a capitalist production of history that has delivered us to a culture that teaches us to think this way, right? But it's not bad that we do. I don't want to overcome this, right? I want to think about it and I want to contextualize my pain, put it out. I think that's the thing that feminism has taught me the most is contextualize your internal world. And don't just blame your parents. It's usually society's doing this to you, right? Don't just psychoanalyze yourself. It's not you and your dad necessarily. It might be you and culture. Like, you didn't do this to yourself, right? So if capitalism has produced this unequal relationship to romantic love, and capitalism also produces alienation, Marx's theory of alienation, none of us are connected to the fruits of our labor. None of us really do the work that sustains us. Do you guys, unless, it's funny, unless you're kind of an elite. If you're an elite now, you're like, I'm going to plant an herb garden, right? Or I'm going to learn to knit. It's just it's the sustaining labor now is kind of like a cute hobby. We don't do anything that connects us to survival. And our labor used to bring the family together, and now it separates us from each other. Capitalism and patriarchy are very alienating forces, right? And so to wrap this up, because I'm at the end of my time here, there is a feminist lesson and a value, I think, that we can, I said in the description of the talk that there's a way in which we can think about where we are when we're brokenhearted that can be used as an agent of social change, right? And that's a big claim to make, I know, but. And I'm not saying the change starts with the individual, but the individuals do change things, right? And you can at least change the story that you tell yourself about where you are in your life. I don't want to become more like a man. I know that. I don't want to be fine in the loss of love. I don't want to deny the obligations that I offered the other person just because the relationship's over. Those obligations, in my mind, remain intact. Kinship remains. I don't want to create a hierarchy of characteristics in which being strong is better than being weak. Because feminism has taught me to think of these concepts as socially constructed ideas. In the context of slavery, for example, Europeans justified the enslavement of Africans because there was a notion that Africans were stronger. It's not true. There's no such thing as race. We know that now. But do you get the point? Strength and weakness are culturally constructed concepts that are used to benefit those in power, right? So weakness is not even a useful term to me, right? I already said this, but thinking of people as how can we change the world, I'm not going to listen to that coach. I'm going to contact my ex if I need to. I'm going to think of myself as embedded in a social network in which the people that I've formed kinship ties with remain in my life. One more thing, though. Oh, God damn it. I had two more things. Shit. As a feminist, we need to recognize privilege, right? And there is a place I think women have privileges that men do not. I can show up at a bar, did this with Matt the other night, weeping uncontrollably. Weird thing to do, right? Everyone's just having a drink, and I'm like, right? I might look pathetic, I might look annoying, but my gender presentation is not questioned. Nobody questioned whether or not I was a real woman. Women do have the privilege of grief, of public grief, that men don't have. Some men can do it, but I bet dollars to donuts, when they're doing that, their gender is at the forefront of how you experience their grief. And so I think women need to recognize their privilege with relationship to grief and loss, that we do have the ability to express it. It doesn't mean we can do it comfortably, but we don't have to check our womanhood at the door to do it. And men do. It's kind of jarring to me how strong masculinity, masculinity never gives men a break. It's constantly there, right? I think, and I'm learning more and more, there's the Trump tapes, they grab them by the, The thing that's so upsetting about that is the way they're laughing at her. Masculinity happens when there's no women around. That's what I'm learning. It's when men talk to other men about women. That's the dangerous masculinity. Okay, my last point here is then, this is more spiritual. Lessons not from feminism, but from the gods. So I'm going to read to you. There's a couple of theories about love. One of them is a more masculinist tradition. One of them I associate more with feminism. These come from the Greek philosophers, though. One form of one side of this says And we should always remain intact. We must be self-mastered. We must not allow ourselves to be destroyed by anything external, not even love. Socrates, other folks said, no. If you do that, if you close out insanity, if you close out the possibility of transformation, and letting yourself be destroyed, like let Eros wreak its havoc on you. Because if you don't do that, you're already dead. Once you've achieved self-mastery, once you know who you are the self, right? Self-care, self-help, focus on yourself, You're not in time anymore. And you have to continue to be in time to unfold. You have to allow yourself grief to be alive. It's beautiful. And so I thought I would end with someone who really, I think, is the thinker on that particular topic. He starts off his piece on this by throwing gender out the door. So this is like almost an apolitical. He starts off as saying, I'm not a woman, I am not a man. Who am I quoting? I am something that you'll never understand. No need to worry. But the second passage of this song is so profound. It's the title of the lecture tonight, I Would Die For You. Like, right? I want to ask us to think about this in terms of if we are constantly being called to be the politically complete subject, the masculine I, the selfhood, right? And there's maybe a feminist invocation to say, no, allow your self-destruction. That's where transformation is. And this is, who is the I, I'm asking? And I would die for you. It's not self-annihilation there. I think it's a recognition of our inherent connectedness. Listen to this. Have you ever read the lyrics of I Would Die For You? How profound they are. This is the second verse. I'm not your lover. I'm not your friend. I am something that you'll never comprehend. No need to worry. No need to cry. I'm your Messiah, and you are the reason why. I am God because you made me God, which means you're God, which means I'm God. It's this inherent unity between us. I would die for you, right? It's like Hegel's right. I can't end the quote discussion there, but the person that walks away the master is a person willing to die. And that doesn't mean Sylvia Plath die. It means you can destroy me. I'll be fine. Because I recognize the unity in this connection. So we'll leave it with Prince. Thanks, guys. So sorry I started late, guys. No PowerPoint, but thank you guys. We got through it, right? And I will send you guys, if you're interested, there's a pretty great little movie of me and my friend Danny reenacting Bubba. So I'll send it. Can we send it via email?
Yeah. Can we do a few minutes for questions?
Oh, yeah, I've got all night. As long as I do.
Do some really quick, like 2 or 3 questions.
Sure.
Wait for the mic before you start
There's
your
one
question,
behind you.
please.
Hi. So I'm just wondering, like, how do you think modern day dating and like the swiping culture, like, has that commodified love as we know it, and has it contributed to like the masculinity of it?
I'm so glad you asked this question. This is one of the things I had on here and decided to skip past in the interest of time. So when I said that modern romance privileges the male experience, right? This is absolutely what I'm talking about. And, people bristle when you say things like this because they think that what I mean is women want love and they're not cool enough to just want hookups, right? You see how there's an inherent valuation of like, we degrade the desire for love in that. How fucked up are we that we think someone's weak if they desire a relationship? Like when you're dating, the first thing you're supposed to say is, I'm not looking for a relationship, which what you're really saying is, I'm totally cool. If you're looking for a relationship, you're a loser, right? So I think it's very dangerous for women. First of all, it's literally dangerous. Women have to subject themselves to danger that men just don't. And also, this is the most depressing thing. And I've noted, my students have been telling me this too, which in a gender studies class, it's otherwise maybe creepy, but women are having less orgasms than ever before since sex studies have started. There's less female orgasms happening, period, in this country. Because of hookup culture. Women are much less likely to achieve orgasm on a hookup. Someone has to know them. They have to know their body. It takes a while in most relationships for a woman to achieve orgasm. In hookup culture, there's absolutely no reason for a man to learn. I mean, it's kind of a cheap answer just to point to sex, but it's one that matters to me a lot. Like, and that's the place where, when my student, the one who said, "I'm black, my husband's white," racialized, that's a much better example of the person who's political. I responded to it going, yeah, and what about when you don't have orgasms? Because it's like, to me, like when I don't have an orgasm during a sexual experience, that is a political experience for me. I politicize that. Like, how dare you, right? Okay, that's it. Thank you for asking that. Anyone else? Everyone's like, do not ask her out. Any other questions? Yeah, please.
How do you think
Oh, wait for the mic.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, it's for the recording. It sounds weird if there's.
Hi. How do you think online dating affects a lot of what we just talked about, like those power dynamics?
I mean, it's because it's different. That's different than hookup culture, right? And I haven't actually ever gone into the world of online dating, not because I have any values around it. I just haven't, and so I don't have as much firsthand kind of like awareness of it. But my sense is, okay, I'll tell you this, what I said before, that you have to present yourself as both open to relationships, but not in no way can you seem to have need. There's a really strong imperative through pictures, to be carefree, to be just kind of easy breezy, right? And I see that as a gendered phenomenon. So I'll tell you anecdotal evidence. I have a friend who was having trouble meeting somebody through her site. Everyone's if you know me, you're gonna know who she is. She's Russian. She's probably having a baby right now. And I was like, why? Let me see your site. And I was like, no. You can't include all this information about yourself. Don't actually tell them about yourself. Right? I was like, because she was getting just like bad. So I was like, it was like this much of a description. I was like, just axe it out, right? Mail order Russian bride went south. Help me. Cool people started writing her. She's basically now married. Like, it worked. But she had to present herself as like, just having a sense of humor, not really here looking for anything, right? And there's a way in which it benefits men in that they don't have to feel bad if they ever say no. Because there's always this precondition, like, hey, I told her, I said I wasn't looking for a relationship, and that in and of itself is supposed to, a get out of jail free card for any of the emotional sabotage that happens, right? Was this talk useful for anyone that's maybe suffering or had a broken heart at any point? Yes? Okay. I almost, today I was like, why am I doing this? I'm like right in the middle of this heartbreak. What the fuck was I thinking? But I was thinking, I'm hoping that maybe somehow talking about this in this setting might help people a little bit who feel kind of alone with their sadness. So you guys have been an incredibly kind audience. Thank you very, very much. So.